Yo, I'm Toycat, and 1.16 was the Nether update, changing forever the hell-like dimension in Minecraft by adding new biomes, the Bastion, and even the ability to trade with pig-like people, as ridiculous as that sounds, while 1.14 was all about fictional villagers and their new antagonists in the form of the pillagers, but it also introduced the crossbow and suspicious stew, which can give magical effects when you eat it. Obviously, both of those updates had a strong grounding in the fantasy elements of Minecraft, whereas 1.18 on the other hand is making terrain more natural, while 1.19 is going to update swamps with frogs and mud. And although these might make great additions to the game, it honestly shows more clearly than ever the divide in updates, that between realism and magic. And in today's video, we're going to dive into exactly why this is such a big deal and why Mojang seems to have troubles resolving it. So we've spoken about what Minecraft has been doing and how they've kind of flip-flopped from 1.14 and 1.16 being very magic and fantasy heavy updates, whereas 1.15, 1.17 and 1.18 are updates filled with realistic content instead. And this is a very interesting divide looking at the past, but you know, it's one of those things where it seems as though there really is just two sides of the Minecraft development team, people who are very, very argumentative in favor of making the game more realistic and teaching people more, and people who are very strongly in favor of making more whimsical, fantasy, fun features. I mean, you can even see it in the terrain generation. There are structures like amethyst geodes, which are so carefully crafted to be exactly true to nature, and then in the exact same terrain generation, you find mushroom islands filled with this guy, who is very much a real animal, trust me, who you can milk to then get a stew that gives you different effects depending on which flower you fed the cow before. It's very, very ludicrous, and anyway, with that said, let's start by making the case for realism, because traditionally I'm always on the side of make a game more fun over making a game that is technically realistic. But I think there is a very strong case to be made for things that are in the real world being added to Minecraft as opposed to more fantasy things, because Minecraft is best when it just takes a real thing and exaggerates it very slightly. The first thing I ever fell in love with when I started playing Minecraft were the stupid sheep. I mean, that not only are they derpy with their eyes, not only do they not really make sense because they regrow their wool when they eat grass, but also they just kind of look silly. And if you play Minecraft Bedrock, they look even sillier when you shear them and you can kind of see what's going on under there. It's a very silly looking animal, but I'd be lying if I said I didn't love it. The same is true for some of my favorite biomes. I mean, the savanna biome isn't a perfect rendition of a savanna in real life, but it does have grass and it does have very little rain. It is a very, you know, like dry biome. And as a result, it's a biome where you can go to get this lovely grass effect, still have your trees, and also not have rain ruin your day, because I really, really don't like rain. And so making features realistic is not just a way of saying, yeah, they're going to be boring. I mean, there is some cases where that is true. I mean, just take a look at the current jungles if you want an example of that. They look so exciting because you're like, oh, it's a jungle, and then you walk into one, and although it's filled with different things, they're all pretty much useless as they would be in real life. I mean, melon slices are terrible compared to cooked steak, and so the food of the biome isn't that useful. There's also cocoa beans, but that's something. And then the animals of the biome, I mean, it's a panda, and Minecraft is trying to be true to real life by making the panda basically a useless animal that makes you question how it can even survive. Seriously, I spend so much time watching panda clips, and they're adorable in the real world, but they're not a useful animal by any means, and so you pass them in Minecraft and you're like, oh, he's rolling off a cliff again, that's adorable. There are also parrots and there are ocelots here, but given that ocelots can't be tamed directly into cats, which is, by the way, a tip for the real world, again, people try to tame ocelots all the time, and it doesn't usually end well for them. You know, like, it's a useful, you know, count that, like, some biomes are kind of boring because they go a bit too realistic, but some biomes are both realistic and fun. I mean, the savanna biome, the mesa biome, and post caves and cliffs, obviously, you can go below ground and you can find the lush caves, which is a type of cave you really do find in the real world. You can make things realistic in Minecraft and make them fun. It obviously just requires a bit more curation and a bit more, I would even argue, talent in making it in there. And I feel like one of the really great benefits that we never talk about of Minecraft adding realistic features is that it really allows you to learn things about the real world. Did you know, for example, that amethyst geodes in the real world are this amethyst thing inside of a calcite structure that then is inside of some basalt? I did not know about the mineral mineral composition of those, but I learned something from Minecraft. I didn't know that the Mesa Bryce biome, or I think it's called the Badlands Edge biome, modified biome, whatever this biome is called right now, it used to be called the Mesa Bryce, which was accurate because it's modeled on the Bryce Canyon in Utah. I learned about a really cool place inside of the United States, at least until they decided to change the name to make it more generic and less specific to one place in one country, which is a whole interesting other thing about, like, is it realistic to make the argument that the Bryce Canyon exists in other countries? I've looked all around England and I have not found anything quite like that canyon. But yeah, I learned about a brand new place, I learned about a brand new type of mineral, and there are all other sorts of things that I learned from Minecraft, and I'm sure that you've learned from Minecraft. Even dumb stuff like, oh, you put sand in a furnace to make glass, or did you know the ore kind of spawns naturally and it's mostly made of stone? You have to smelt away the stone so you have just the refined, ore, in the case of iron and gold, left over that's in a bar form that's much more craftable. Wow, isn't that cool that I learned that? In fact, I used to play RuneScape a lot as a child, and there's so many weird real-life facts that I've learned from that game that I genuinely do value. A lot of people who use Minecraft as an outlet, if they're young people or not, are going to learn actual things if they make the game realistic, and that is a really big benefit. However, I think there's a good argument to be made for Magic as well, because here is the case for Magic or fantasy Minecraft updates. So far in this video, it looks like Minecraft has mostly settled the Realism versus Magic debate by saying, yeah, we're going to make the game as realistic as possible and only deviate from it in a very few specific places. And honestly, when you look at some of the footage like you've seen so far in this video, minus the Never update and the Village and Pillage update, you can look at that and you can say, yeah, actually, Minecraft is a pretty realistic game, isn't it? But that's because you're kind of ignoring all of the weird fantasy areas that exist. Even just going as simply as looking at the mobs, it's like, so yeah, there are sheep, cow, pigs, and then there's also guardians, the wither, the ender dragon, there's this thing, which is horrifying, there's this thing, there's every single Nether mob, and just, long story short, Minecraft is filled with things that don't exist in the real world. I don't think that the Ocean Monument is any worse of being filled with guardians, as opposed to, I don't know, sharks or dolphins or something that just attack you in another way. Obviously, they won't add sharks to Minecraft, but that's a point we'll dive into later. But there is this very strong argument that Minecraft is already this magical, mystical game, and there's a lot of fun to be had in those elements. When the sun goes down, almost all of the mobs that will spawn, besides the spider, are basically just your worst nightmares incarnate. I mean, look at the skeleton, and the zombie, and the drowned of the trident. I cannot tell you the fear I have when I see him trying to throw one of those at me. There are so many terrifying mobs in the game, and they work because they are magic. Even when we look at the systems of the game itself, look at your hotbar, for example. There is a health meter, a hunger meter, which we can argue is how the real world works, and then there's a giant experience bar. Experience is a system which mostly works for the benefit of enchanting and repairing tools that have enchantments on them. I did a check. I went to my local library, and I confirmed that actually, if you put one of your tools surrounded by a bunch of books, it doesn't magically just become better, and so this is a magical element in Minecraft, one of the three core mechanics of the game that is always on your heads-up display. Obviously, the fact that your coordinates are always displayed if you're playing Bedrock is something that is kind of magical. I mean, you wouldn't just know that by default unless you are the world's best explorer. And even when we look at all of the other systems in the game, for example, brewing, or for example, being able to put gold around an apple and then the apple healing you better as opposed to giving you serious jaw problems followed by indigestion, that is a huge point in the argument that magic is already here in Minecraft. Minecraft is already a very strongly fantasy game that just every now and then has some real elements. And even when you look at the jungle, which I mentioned as the most boring realistic biome earlier, it's actually made somewhat interesting by the fact that sometimes when you're in those jungles, it's really boring when it's realistic, but when there's something magical afoot, when a random temple appears out of nowhere, you know you're going to have a good time. There are traps set by some previously unknown person, and in exchange for going past those traps, you get some treasure. That is fun. That alone proves the core point of Minecraft, in my opinion, that it's about exploration. It's about knowing that under new stones, you're going to uncover things that you genuinely can't comprehend. If you want to make a beacon, for example, which is already a kind of ludicrous concept, why would having a big beam going up to the sky help you in any way with your mining or with health regeneration? But, if you want to make a beacon, you've got to kill yourself a bunch of big black skeletons skeletons, and then those big black skeletons turn into this three-headed monster that wants to kill every living being, and it's all a very terrifying fight, but it makes you realize that all of the best fun accomplishment tasks in Minecraft generally come from magic. However, magic is not to, we can't just say that it's the best mechanic ever, because I think the reason it works so well, I think the reason the wither is so terrifying and beacons are so fun, and that making potions and enchantments is so interesting, is because these things exist in a world that otherwise does have some reality to it. I mean, obviously Minecraft is only ever as realistic as the voxel format that it's in. Every block is a meter by a meter by a meter, and so it's never a perfect rendition of real life, but it does make you feel like you're in a world you can understand that then has some big things different about it, and so magic can only ever be interesting in a world that works by default. If there were no rules grounding Minecraft, if in the next update they could update the swamp by adding a new swamp monster to it, or you thought that they might try to, win some of that Fortnite market share back by adding an assault rifle into that next update, I mean, sure, that thing would be fun for the split second when you first craft one from, 7 steel and some gunpowder or something. It'd be really fun when you first made your assault rifle, but then when you're gunning down creepers, you're like, oh, yeah, this isn't fun anymore. Something about, having fun in a game requires a grounded set of rules. Have you ever noticed that when you dive into creative, you're like, oh, this is so much easier. I'm saving all that time I would spend in survival, but then within just a few short minutes, sometimes it's hours for some people, you're kind of bored because you have all of the tools at your disposal and now they mean nothing. This is something that I think is really true for Minecraft. And so what is the ultimate conclusion to Realism versus Magic? Which direction should Minecraft take? Honestly, the answer is it needs to balance both very carefully. It needs to be very clear, especially to, parents and to apparently people below the age of 12 who Minecraft just assumes can't think because of the whole, we won't add animals that we don't want you to kill in the real world because we assume that if you can punch a shark in Minecraft, you'll punch a shark in real life. We've heard that sort of insulting logic all of the time, and I don't think it's a very compelling case at all because Minecraft should be very clearly not a perfectly realistic game. However, if Minecraft goes too far the other direction, it becomes a game that no one can really pick up. Why are you mining these blocks? Oh, you're mining these blocks because you want to defeat the big swamp monster and he'll give you some schmeckles which you can spend on the the weird sky people shop, and it's like, ooh, that sounds so exciting, yeah. Whereas it's much simpler to just be like, yeah, I want to build a big old castle on top of that hill, but to build that castle I might have to kill a bunch of these weird bush monsters. They really love you but they want to explode as close as possible to you, if not inside you. It's really terrifying. Yeah, you want to, if you want to do anything, you need to kind of have this grounded nature to it with this fun little whimsical bit thrown in. I think this is actually one of the biggest challenges they have, because when you look at an update that is 100% realism, it's kind of boring to the players. I mean, what we've seen from 1.19 so far is fun because it's like, yeah, frogs can eat fireflies, but the really interesting parts of 1.19 to me are the fact that each of those frogs are going to have their own weird abilities or drops, something to make them unique depending on the biome that they're in. The things that make learning about the new swamp interesting to me is knowing there are going to be new blocks which can do interesting, weird interactions, just like how learning about dripstone, which is a real thing in the real world, there are stalactites and stalagmites. Learning about dripstone is kind of interesting when you see it, and watching it drop on a mob is like, ha ha ha, that's interesting, that's the real world. But what's far more interesting is realizing that dripstone plus a cauldron can be used to make infinite lava. Minecraft does a good job when it takes these grounded, real-world mechanics and pushes them much further than that. And I also feel like, though, that some of the best mechanics they ever added to the game, in the forms of potion and enchantments, could probably be improved upon by now. Sure, we saw in 1.16 they added bartering with piglins, which is arguably just trading with villagers under a different name. Sure, we saw in 1.14 they changed up the trading system, and in 1.13 they added the insomnia mechanic with, you know what it comes with. You know, the mob that enforces the insomnia system and how not fun that is. Sure, when they're adding these new mechanics, they all feeling a little bit magic-based, but I think it would be a lot of fun to add something like that now, as long as it is balanced with the realism. Just like with almost everything in life, if you go too far down one path or the other, it's almost universally going to be a bad idea, and so Minecraft's real challenge in 1.19 and beyond is making sure they balance things that exist in the real world with things that are actually fun to play. If you make the entire game fun with no structure or point behind it, it's not Minecraft anymore. If you make the whole thing realistic with no fun, then you haven't made a fun game, you've just made Minecraft Education Edition Part 2 for whatever reason, and yeah, that is, I think, the balance that Minecraft needs to strike, but that's just my opinion. Let me know what yours is in the comments down below. I'm always curious to hear if people agree, disagree, or think that no, actually, what I love in Minecraft is when it teaches me things. I hate learning about creepers because they're not even a real animal yet. They will be one day, though. When I become a scientist, I'll make creepers real. I'll make everyone pay with my explosions. But speaking of explosions, make sure to commit a serious terror offense against the like button. Maybe even subscribe if you want to see more of these videos. And yeah, turn on those notifications if you want to see more, because I'll see you next time. Goodbye.